Good morning, class. Today we'll be reviewing the trigonometric graph quiz. I know that the quiz I set it out to be due on 12 p.m. You guys will be doing that for today and tomorrow. You won't be getting a separate work for today. That's the only part. The only particular reason is that the graphing portion, which you'll see here, I want you guys to be able to do this more comprehensively, and it will take some time. So for me to give you guys the quiz tomorrow and only have a couple of hours to do so, I don't want that to happen. I want you guys to have a good plenty of time to really understand how to do this and then really turn it in. It's due tomorrow 12 p.m. For today you have nothing due, but if you want to turn in your quiz early, that's perfectly fine by me. So you get 4 questions, and I'm going to go over 4 questions like your quiz. Number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. Don't worry, these are not your quiz questions. They're separate, but I made 2 extra ones just so that I could give you guys a review. So you guys can't really copy and paste it from here, unfortunately, but I'm going to go over them nonetheless. First question, second question, you guys should all know how to do this. I'm going to go over the first. Second one, try it on your own, just for the extra practice of it. Or if you don't have to do it, then that's fine. But when I go to the slides 6 and 7, I really need you guys to try this question on your own when I go over this. Okay, so remember, amplitude is 4, frequency is 1/2, new period is 2 pi divided by 1/2, which means it's 4 pi. Each increment you divide by 4, which is pi. Phase shift is pi units to the right, vertical shift is 1 unit up. So I'm going to draw the graph here. I should probably just use different color for this one. Y scale, and then X scale. Okay, so I have, let me see, positive 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then negative 1, 2, 3. The reason why I want to establish that is because if I start from a vertical shift of positive 1, I go down 4, which ends up being negative 3, and I go up 4, which ends up being at positive 5. So those are your framework max and min, and middle line. So the extra increments, I'm going to make it as every pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi. You can do 5 pi if just because we've been used to doing that. Negative pi, negative 2 pi, negative 3 pi, negative 4 pi, negative 5 pi. You won't be getting graphs like the ones you have been doing before. You have to create everything on your own. So I know that's a lot of work to do, so please make sure all the increments are kind of evenly spaced out. If you are one of those people who know that you guys can't graph this well, this is what you need to work on. Don't rush this. Take your time with it and make sure that I can read it. If I can't read what you're saying, I am taking points off because I don't really know what you're saying. So from my end, you got to think of it from my end, not from what you're thinking about. So pi units to the right, that's where I'm going to start here. And it's a sine graph, negative, so I always start with mid. Negative sign means I'm going to go to min and I go to mid. So every increment of pi, I'm going to be alternating. Minimum, middle, maximum, middle. And then this will go on and on. And that will be my wave right here. Okay? Yes, it looks like a cosine wave because it starts at the maximum. Okay, so with that being said, let's take a look at the second question. And this is where I would like you to pause the video and get everything out of the way because I'm going to go through these really quickly. Okay, I'm assuming you guys have all this. Amplitude is 3, frequency is 1/4, new period is 8 pi, each increment is 2 pi, phase shift pi units to the right, vertical shift 3 units down. Establishing the framework and the grid, I go 3 units to the right, 3 units down, and amplitude is 3, so which means my highest point value will be 0. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That will be good enough. My midline is at negative 3. My lowest would be at negative 6, and my highest would be at 0. And then each increment of being 2 pi, 4 pi, 6 pi, 8 pi, 10 pi, negative 2, negative 4, negative 6, negative 8, negative 10. Okay, so at this particular point, the pi units to the right means it's actually halfway if I were to draw them, that would be the 1 pi, 3 pi, 5 pi, 7 pi, and you get the idea. The reason why we want to do that is because at that particular location, which is at pi, that's where the negative cosine will start to happen. Negative cosine means that I start at min, then I go to mid, and then I go to maximum. So at pi, I'm going to start at the minimum. But then the next point happens at 3 pi, so that's at middle, 5 pi, 7 pi, and then 9 pi. That would be my first half of the wave. First half of this graph, or one full wave. The next one will happen at negative pi, so the middle will happen at negative pi. Then at 3 pi max, 5 pi middle, 7 pi minimum, negative 9 pi at middle. So my wave will look something like this, where my original point would have started here at minimum, but it moved to the right by pi units. So it will show that it's still correct. Please indicate where each of these points are going to be in order for me to know. Okay, so these two questions you have here and here, those are the ones I gave you for your quiz today. Make sure you get them done, turn it in by tomorrow noon. Now, from where you, what the new portion of this quiz is going to be. You're going backwards, but I'm still going to ask you to identify all of these different components. Now, you guys, if you guys don't find anything, like in terms of like, oh, I don't really particularly have a phase shift, because you can represent this graph with cosine or sine. It really does not matter to me. For example, it starts at minimum. So I can start with negative cosine or something like that. But if you wanted to start at the middle here, that means that it's a sine wave or negative sine wave moved to the left. So for phase shift, depending on which graph that you want to do, you can just write none, or you could just write, how much would that be? Pi over 4 to the left. You can write it like that. It doesn't matter to me which one would be. Okay, so first, let's take a look at the amplitude. Always, what you want to do is you want to take a look at the highest and the lowest value. That's the first thing you want to do. And because it's 3 and negative 1, if you add them and divide by 2 as if it was a midpoint, you will find out that gives you 1, and that is your midline. Okay, so highest plus the lowest divided by 2. The amplitude is how much you're going from 1 to 3, so that's 2, because 3 minus 1 is 2. Now frequency. Now this is where it gets a little tricky, but frequency you can always figure it out by how fast this thing is happening in terms of 2 pi, or the regular wave. The way that I always do it is, okay, so let's say that I am determined to make this into a negative cosine wave, because I clearly see that there is a minimum value right here. Remember those 5 essential points that we have been talking about? Minimum, middle, maximum, middle, and then minimum. These 5 waves will create one uphill and one downhill, like this. So that is one full wave. A one full wave happens from 0 to pi. So what I say is the new period is pi then. So I actually start from 3 and then go to 2. If the new period is pi, that means that it's equal to 2 pi divided by b. So what should be the value of b be in order for your new period to be pi? It has to be 2. So you can figure it out that way. Find out your point. Pick the next 4 points in the lines, like in the dotted lines, where you're alternating between middle, max, and min. And then you'll be able to find how long does it take for it to complete a period. Each increment, therefore, which would be pi divided by 4. So I know that the Desmos graph did not give you pi over 4, but this right here would be pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, and then 4 pi over 4. Okay? Phase shift. Now the phase shift, I'm going to say none because I'm using a negative cosine wave. If you were to use sine, then you definitely need a phase shift, but I want to do the one that's easier. Vertical shift is just 1 because I know that midline is going to be the same thing as that. Now let's say that I'm incorporating all of this combined. So I'm going to take the component and then just put it in there. Amplitude is 2, so I'm going to put 2 in front of the cosine, but after negative sign, because I know it's a negative cosine wave because I start at the minimum. Then I open up the parentheses and I say 2, because that's your period, times x. Phase shift is none, so I don't have to write minus or plus anything. So if you want to do minus 0, that's fine. But instead, I will just put x instead. And then my vertical shift is +1, so I'm just going to put +1. So my final answer would look like this. -2 cosine of 2x plus 1. So you're using the wave, understanding how this wave works, and then putting it into a equation format. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Try this on your own first, and then let me know when you have it, and then we'll go over it together as a class. First, establish your midline. It should be pretty clear that it's -1. I start at the middle, so I know that it's going to be some sort of a sine wave, but it goes to minimum right after that, so it's a negative sine wave. Next thing is, if I'm talking about sine, I start from here, the next 4 essential points. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in total, but the next 4, right, after the first point. So from here to here, that's how much it takes to finish a wave. So it's from 0 to 2 pi over 3. So my new period is 2 pi divided by 3. My amplitude is from the middle to the highest point. And then if you take a look, this is 0, this is -1, this is -2. So this value is just 1. Frequency comes from number 3. When you set this equal to 2 pi divided by b, b is equal to 3. That's pretty self-explanatory. Each increment will be this divided by 4, which would be 2 pi divided by 3 times 1 over 4. Reduce this by 2, and you get pi over 6. And as you can see, each increment is pi over 6. The phase shift, I'm going to put none. Okay, so in some cases, if you don't see any phase shift, you don't really have to put anything down. Now let's put up all of these things combined. Amplitude is 1, so I don't really need to write anything there. Sine of 3 times x, and then the vertical shift of -1. So all I gotta do is just put it like that. Negative sine 3x minus 1. If you're ever doubting yourself as to whether this question is correct or not, just go to Desmos and type this in and see if you actually get this graph. Of course, you want to fix your windows and make sure that everything checks out before you turn it in as your answer. Okay. Hope this video helps. The next two will be on your quiz, this one and this one. It will be a little bit tricky, but make sure that you will have plenty of time to do so. Use your calculator, use the Desmos to your advantage, and get these questions done for me. Okay, fill up all the blanks, make sure you have the equation, and show me the work that you actually have done this by hand. Thank you and have a good day.